Welcome to the TIMFD podcast. Today is my favorite day is about appreciating every day as it comes, no matter what life throws at us. We hope that this podcast speaks to you, and if it does, please like, share, and comment. Now let's find out why today is our favorite day this week.
Well, David, welcome back. Today is my favorite day.
Yes, it is.
Good to be here. We having a good time on our last podcast, but we want to talk about
whining. That's what we did last time.
Yes, we talked about whining. We want to talk about the insanity cycle.
Oh, boy.
What's the definition of
Insanity?
Insanity?
Yeah, doing the same thing over and over again, hoping for a different result.
Yeah, and how many of us do that?
Well, I figure if I keep on eating ding-dongs and ho-hos over and over again, I'm going to lose weight.
Yeah, yeah. Right.
Not really, but
Not
I mean,
really, but yeah.
that's the truth. We kind of think that in a goofy way, if I keep doing this, somehow it's going to change something. And all it's going to do is keep on putting on weight, right?
Right, exactly.
So it's the same thing with anything, when it comes to the insanity cycle. For me, it's, again, we talked about mindset and mindfulness, about our eyes being on the right things. Philippians 4:8 talks about looking at those things that are wonderful and trustworthy and beautiful. And but if we're looking at horrible things and keep on putting horrible things in our minds, then of course garbage in, garbage out. And so garbage will come out of our attitude and everything else. But if we think that, hey, if I put all these horrible things into my mind, that somehow I'm going to have beautiful sunshine things coming out, it's not going to happen.
Not going to happen, no.
So again, it's what do we do with this thing? And so can you give an example of an insanity cycle that you had been in and then how maybe you broke that cycle?
Yeah, a couple things. So, a lot of my history has to do with restaurants and bars.
Yes.
I was general manager of several different organizations. And so I had actually two, and they both had to do with beverages.
Okay.
One is coffee.
Oh, wow.
So the first time I went, I was shaking all the time. Then, and I don't know, I was in my late 20s, early 30s.
I wonder why you were shaking.
Yeah, I'm thinking Parkinson's, right? It's just scaring the heck out of me, right? So I go to the doctor and he's, my blood pressure's a little bit elevated and I've got the shakes. He says, how much coffee do you drink? And I asked him, I says, you want to know number of pots or number of cups?
Whoa.
Yes. And
well, that's because it was your restaurant.
That was right. And
that makes sense.
At that point in my life, early in my career, I was afraid to start drinking. Okay. And so,
drinking the coffee?
Alcohol.
Oh, alcohol. Okay. So now we're in a different restaurant.
You were going to go. Okay. Yeah. So it was one of those, I had to make a decision. And how did I stop? I just let it get old. So I used to keep a warmer on my desk. So I put my coffee cup down there. It was always, I cannot stand cold coffee unless it's iced coffee.
Okay.
I can drink iced coffee, but I cannot drink lukewarm coffee.
Sure.
So, and I would turn the coffee pot off.
Okay.
Instead of leaving the coffee pot on, I turn it off. I always had one that pretty much had my coffee in it.
So for you, you had an insanity cycle that I keep on drinking this coffee, and you were drinking it for energy, I guess, or
it was something to do.
Something to do. So you're in this insanity cycle. Now it's affecting your health at a young age.
Yes.
And you kept on going, well, I could just keep on drinking this stuff. But then it was like, okay, I got to get out of this habit more than anything else, right? So now it's a habit-breaking thing.
It was a habit-breaking thing. When he told me, they go back and forth. Coffee's good for you. Coffee's bad for you.
Sure. Nothing
in excess is good for you.
No.
And so I had to go back and look at that and say, okay, 6 pots of coffee a day is excess.
Yes.
And I worked so many hours and long hours, and I had a short time where I sold to restaurants, grocery stores. Okay. So when you go in, first thing they offer you a cup of coffee.
Yeah, that
makes
sense.
A cup of coffee. And so I switched to water. Okay. You never turn down their hospitality when you're sales. Somebody comes in, you go in to sell something.
I can have water. That'd be great.
Have water. So it dawned on me, I don't need this much coffee. I don't want this much coffee. And so I had to say, what's my limit? Where do I stop? Now I still to this day can drink a cup of coffee before I go to bed and sleep like a baby. That's not.
Wow. No way. I'd bounce off the walls.
Baby wakes up every 2 hours to, go to the bathroom.
No, I'd be bouncing off the walls. There's no way.
But it wasn't an issue of getting to sleep. And a lot of people are like that. They bounce off the walls. But I don't, because I know it's not good for me.
Okay.
And so I had to come to the conclusion that this much coffee is not good for me. I need to switch and drink more water and stop drinking coffee. So now my coffee habit is I have a cup when I get up in the morning.
Okay.
I did insert my lemon water in before the coffee now, so that's something
Sure.
we talked about earlier I need to do because of my health. And I have that cup, and then I'll have a cup with my wife.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would say 9 days out of 10, that's all I have.
Okay.
And so the cup I have with my wife, I sweeten it a little bit with sweetened condensed milk, but it's coffee I started to drink when we went to Ukraine in 2013,
Sure.
and it just brings back, happy memories. And so the other insanity cycle thing I had was I was told when I got into managing restaurants and bars and restaurants with alcohol in them, stuff like that, that I needed to have a tolerance for alcohol.
Okay.
Because my boss told me that.
Mm-hmm.
And
I've heard that from guys that I've met that have been in, in the alcohol industry.
Yeah. And I didn't have one. And so I started, I got to the thing, I would drink craft beers.
Yeah, because you have to taste them all.
You have to taste them all and stuff like that.
Sure.
I mean, one restaurant I had, we had 110 beers.
Yeah.
So,
Hey, you have to know what they
and
taste like.
my name's on the board 3 times. So that's, that's a lot of beer over the course of time, right?
Yeah.
And so I've always had the fear of being an alcoholic. My grandfather was an alcoholic, died when I was young.
Okay.
Never had a chance to meet him. But I thought that if I would just ramp up, so let's have a beer tonight, and then and then I could drink 2, and then I could drink 3, and my tolerance would grow, right? It's insane.
No, it's
it's
stupid.
crazy
It's
to
stupid.
think that.
I know
doesn't work.
I know a lot of people that think that.
that do that, right?
Yeah.
And so then as time moved on and we sold all the restaurants I worked in that had bars sold a variety of drinks. And people would come in as a general manager or the culinary manager. They would say, well, what goes with this alcohol? What goes with this rum? What goes with this vodka? Which vodka is better? Which whiskey is better? Which bourbon is better? And what's the difference between a whiskey and a bourbon, a Canadian and a Kentucky? I don't know. How do you learn?
By drinking it.
Well, yeah, by being insane and drinking it,
Yeah.
And so, did I learn a lot, and could I speak intelligently about it? Well, I think I was speaking intelligently.
Mm-hmm.
I never drank on the job.
Sure.
After the job was over.
Yeah.
But I finally got to a point where this is nuts.
Right.
I don't need a tolerance to alcohol.
So those are substances.
Yep.
You have also the insanity cycle of how we react.
Oh, absolutely.
We have the reaction of, I'm frustrated. If I yell at this person to, that they would hear me, kind of thing. That never works.
Nope.
It turns people off. Insanity cycles that continue on until it destroys the relationship, the marriage. And I've seen this a lot.
Yes.
It's about how do we talk to people and break the cycle of what we've been taught maybe as kids through our relationships. And learn how to listen more, break the habit of talking over and trying to force a view on somebody rather than just going, you know what, I'm going to stop and hear them and listen to them, paraphrase it back, hear what they have to say, got it, and be able to have a reasonable conversation. The insanity cycle of people pleasing, which was what mine was. The insanity cycle of people pleasing is if I do what these people want and need, they will love me.
Right.
And if they love me, I won't have issues. Did this with my wife, and I think I talked about this before, in which I am a server by nature anyway. My dad brought me up that way, brought our family up that way, but I was serving her to get something from her. If I do all these things and make her so comfortable, she will love me and I'll have more sex. That's
how we think.
That was kind of the mindset, and that was not true. I was not communicating, not meeting her need. She wasn't meeting mine as far as our love languages, and until I got to a place to stop that insanity cycle, and this in doing everything for her, but not meeting the needs that she had. It got me frustrated and it got her frustrated. But when we finally went, okay, Tanya's love language is words of affirmation. The number one was words of affirmation. So we need to have those conversations. Tanya loves those deeper one-on-one conversations that most men don't want to deal with. And so I had to start giving her notes, speaking words of affirmation to her, but also to have those deeper, harder conversations that would that are uncomfortable, but would bring us together, closer together. And honestly, the time with Rebecca, with her death, the first 2 months, we were just struggling because both of us were just in a shock and sorrow era of our lives. We didn't know what to do. But then we had to start, let's talk this through. Let's talk about the hurt, the pain, the loss. And it actually brought us closer together. Where a lot of people are broken apart from this, it brought us closer together and brought us to a place of connecting even more than I thought it would happen. But the insanity cycle had to be stop, the closing off, not talking about it. We've got to stop the denial, which is how you break those insanity cycles, is stop denying that there's a problem and deal with the problem, and then start communicating. And that's the big challenge. So I put it in the Today is My Favorite Day book about first, there's things we have to break, the habit of whining and break the insanity cycle. And for me, it was, I'm in this whining spot in my cancer. How do I break that insanity cycle of whining and complaining and woe is me and all that kind of stuff? Well, again, we talked about this last week.
All the time.
Gaze up at God, glance at him, glance at the problems, gaze at him, grab onto him, and accept his love that he wants to bring to me. That's what it is. I accept his love so then I can love other people and really look at their needs a little bit more and break that insanity cycle of another one would be distrust.
Right.
Pastors, surprisingly enough, do get hurt by the people in the church, and the people in the church do get hurt by pastors. Because we're all human beings. And the problem is a lot of people expect pastors to be perfect, and pastors expect the people in the church to be perfect, which is not how it should be. We have to break the insanity cycle that there's some perfection going on here. The only perfect person is Jesus. The only one we can lean on is him. Everyone else that comes into a church or any environment with a lot of people are all dysfunctional, screwed up, sinful people. That's the reality, because that's who I am. But it's not who I am. It's what my insanity cycle is. But who I am is saved by grace, by my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And I can start living out the fruit of the Spirit if I choose to get off the insanity cycle. And I can start choosing to experience love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. It's right out of Galatians 5. And I can start experiencing that if I get out of the insanity cycle in my own brain, saying that no one loves me, God doesn't love me, and break that and say, no, my mindset should be, God loves me so much that he died for me. And I can grasp onto that love. And yes, I can be lovable and love other people well. I can do that. And I can start trusting people. It doesn't mean that I throw, if someone's broken trust with me, it doesn't mean that I suddenly just trust him again. I've forgiven him, I trust him again. I forgive. And now what I do is we build that trust back up. That would not be a insanity cycle. That's breaking the insanity cycle. The insanity cycle would be you're in a relationship where someone has shown distrust to you, and you say, I forgive them, and just put them right back into that thing again, and you're back in the same insanity cycle because you're going to go into the same habits again. I'm not saying to divorce people. I'm not saying to cut people off. What I'm saying is we've got to get out of the insanity cycle of people pleasing and go into a cycle of trust and forgive, trust, and verify. There's nothing wrong with that. The scripture is very clear about that. So how do I do that in a healthy way? And we could do a whole couple of podcasts
on that one,
on that itself. But today we're just talking about there's an insanity cycle that we have. Don't look at the other person, right?
I can't look at anybody else. You mentioned something in there about how listening and hearing and stuff like that. And that's something that I have an issue with. It's an insanity cycle for me in that sometimes, and I'm getting better at it, but sometimes I don't listen to hear. I listen to respond.
Yeah.
And that's the natural course for people, is to listen to respond. And then so they never really hear what's going on. So in talking about it, you mentioned one thing in there that I think is critical if you want to break that insanity cycle, and that is to listen and paraphrase back.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you just said that. You said that, the listening is hard for people. Mm-hmm. We want to respond. But when we sit back and go, okay, I'm going to truly hear them, mm-hmm. And verify what they're saying, let them know that they are important by saying, I hear what you're saying, and paraphrase back to them, that's gigantic.
Yes.
It's gigantic in any relationship.
I've never had anybody that I've done that with say, be upset because I paraphrase back. No. I have had them say, that's not what I meant.
Correct.
That's not what I said. Well, if I had not asked or repeated back or paraphrased back, then I go on in a total misconception. Now the insanity cycle continues. I didn't understand what they were saying. Their trust in the whole ball wax.
I guarantee that that happens in all of our communication. Yes. In every part of communication that we hear it, we're saying we're listening, but we're really not hearing it. We're hearing what we want, or mm-hmm. we are responding in our mind and reacting. And some of us are good at not responding outwardly and just kind of go, okay, this person doesn't really like me. This person doesn't think I'm capable. This person doesn't think that, the insanity cycle. I'm not even listening to them.
Right.
But if I stop and hear, and instead of assuming, which is an insanity cycle thing,
yes,
assuming their feelings and their thoughts, then what happens is that we get into this kind of, well, that person's hurting me and that person's mm-hmm. not really caring. No, what we're saying is that we need to stop and hear.
Yes.
And paraphrase back, or even ask them, can you tell me what I just said? Mm-hmm. Can you kind of paraphrase back what you think I said?
Right.
And your feelings too.
Right.
Because I'm kind of getting a feel here that maybe there's some uneasiness about this.
Right.
And that helps too, because then someone goes, okay, they may not be total honest at the beginning.
Right.
But if we go back and forth on that, they'll start saying, you know what you said to me, and I had this actually with a leader in the church. And a couple of times I'd say, I think that we need to do something different here, mm-hmm. because I just don't, I think that it's too much, mm-hmm. and it's too much for me, too much for you. And what happened is they assumed I was saying they weren't capable of doing something. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that no one's capable of doing what you're asking to do.
Right.
And I know that because I tried it and it didn't work.
Doesn't work. Yeah.
And it was a mess.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about our capacity.
Right.
And that helped.
Yeah.
But I also didn't do that before, long ago. And mm-hmm. I had a guy leave the church completely because he said, you just didn't think I could do this.
Right.
He just said, and I went, no, that's not what I said at all. But that was their assumption. Instead of paraphrasing back to me,
right.
And
let it rattle around up here.
And me not asking the right mm-hmm. question also,
right.
Then it ended up being a big mess. And I'm sure everyone has experienced that with a wife, a husband, a child,
yes,
a parent, co-workers, people in the church, in your own, in a Bible study or whatever.
Right.
We all do that.
We all do that. Yeah.
So the insanity cycle would be maybe one thing we could do is stop assuming what someone's saying.
Yes.
Stop assuming what they think, mm-hmm. and maybe ask more questions.
Yes.
And maybe paraphrase back.
Right.
What's being said.
And then those are some easy things to remember. Here's another thing that you want to look at in yourself. Yeah. If I'm talking to you and I'm giving you a conversation and you answer me within 17 seconds, mm-hmm. you didn't hear what I said.
Yes.
And so if you are answering your spouse within 17 seconds of when she says something, you probably didn't hear what she said correctly. That is the average of time that people will listen before they respond.
I love that.
Yeah. 17 seconds. I love that. Yeah. So it's one of those, and I have to.
So my question is 17 seconds from the beginning that they're talking, or at the end when they finish talking?
No. By 17 seconds, you formed your response already. So you don't ever hear.
In the conversation.
In the conversation. You have formed your response already. That's why it's so critical to break the cycle and say, okay, I really need to listen to what my wife is saying. But most folks, and
Man, Sam, you have all this stuff. I love that. That's 17. I did not know that.
17 seconds, and somebody's looking to respond. So this is another thing I have to, with my students, if they're responding right away, they probably didn't hear exactly what I said. And so I ask them, what did you hear? What did you say? So when somebody responds back to you that quickly and you're really not done with your thought or they didn't hear a word.
I love that.
They formed that response 17 seconds.
So the insanity cycle would be try to keep that. I'm going to do this. I'm going to try to keep that in my head, that 17-second thing, and try to hear them out and just kind of go slow this down.
Yes.
And then it would help me better paraphrase because I could actually hear fully what they're saying and not try to respond so quickly and just hear it. Yeah. I love that. That's great.
So and you'd be surprised how quickly 17 seconds went by because this last part of the conversation has been 3 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we started talking about it at like 17. So
did we really?
Yes,
well, okay. Maybe we'll go back into that more in our next podcast. Yeah. So, I love this because I get to learn. So that's awesome. I love that. That's something I think that we need to look into in the future.
Yep.
In this and talk more about this idea of communicating better in business and our marriages and with our kids, friends, whatever.
Yep.
I think that's
finances.
Awesome. We can get out of our finances. We can get out of this insanity cycle of not hearing and assuming and responding.
Yep.
Right?
I agree.
Okay, so this just helped us go on to our next podcast probably.
There we go.
So we'll look at that a little later on down. Go ahead.
Well, thanks for listening. This has been David Towner, Sam McEwen. Today is our favorite day.
Get the book. Today is my favorite day.
Live intentionally, be blessed, my friends.
Take it easy, guys.
Thank you for listening to TIMFD, Today is My Favorite Day. Views, comments, and opinions are those of the host and guest alone, and Dave and Sam are solely responsible for the content of this podcast. TIMFD is produced and directed by Alex Korn. Music is composed and performed by Chuck Fott. Thank you for listening. Have a great day, live intentionally, and be very blessed.